Hello everyone, I'm the narrator, and I'm here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep more easily. So before we begin, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Where are you from and what time are you watching this? Now, relax and let's get started.
The music box of the deep forest. The cicadas' chorus had faded into the night, giving way to the symphony of nocturnal insects and the gentle murmur of the stream. Four friends, Lin, Min, Nam, and Huang, sat gathered around a crackling campfire deep within the secluded Thach An forest. The firelight danced on their faces, painting them with streaks of light and shadow, highlighting Lin's radiant smile, Min's dreamy eyes, Nam's thoughtful gaze, and Huang's lively spirit. They had explored this forest together since childhood. Every tree, every rock holding cherished memories of playful antics and innocent promises. Min, with his old guitar in hand, softly plucked a familiar melody. It was a song they often sang together, about adventures, friendship, and the mysteries they believed lay hidden within the forest's heart. Min's voice, warm and resonant, blended with the crackle of the fire. Lin gently leaned her head on Nam's shoulder, her eyes closed, savoring this rare moment of peace. Huang was busily roasting marshmallows on a stick, occasionally bursting into giggles when one got too charred. As the night deepened, the forest air grew cooler. Mist began to weave its way through the trees, cloaking the leaves in a silvery shroud. The sounds of the night insects seemed to soften, leaving only the stream's whisper like a lullaby. Min stopped playing, his eyes gazing distantly into the vast darkness. Have you ever wondered what truly lies deep within this forest? Min asked softly, his voice a murmur, almost blending with the wind. Lin opened her eyes, looking at Min. Are you thinking of your grandmother's fairy tales again, Min? She smiled gently. Not just fairy tales, Min said, a hint of seriousness in his voice. This forest has its own soul. I've always felt it. Nam took a sip of hot herbal tea. I feel it too. There's an odd tranquility, as if the forest is listening to us. Huang, still preoccupied with her marshmallows, turned. Come on, don't give me the creeps. We're camping to relax, remember? She said, though her eyes also held a hint of curiosity. A long silence followed. It wasn't a frightening silence, but one that held a beautiful stillness, as if everything around them was drifting into a shared dream. The embers glowed like giant fireflies dancing in the night. Lin felt an unusual sense of peace, a feeling as if she had merged with the forest, becoming a part of it. As the mist grew thicker, they decided to go to sleep. Min was the last to turn off his flashlight, gazing at the starry night sky through the gaps in the leaves. A shooting star streaked across, leaving a faint luminous trail against the dark canvas. Min smiled gently. He felt a strange connection to this forest, as if it were calling him, whispering ancient secrets. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the leaves, awakening the forest, the three friends awoke. Lin rubbed her eyes, looking at Min's tent. It was still closed. She thought perhaps Min was still asleep. Min, wake up! Lin called out. There was no reply. Huang, curious, walked over to Min's tent and unzipped it. The tent was empty. The sleeping bag was neatly folded, the guitar lay undisturbed beside it, but Min was not there. A baffling silence enveloped the three friends. There were no signs of a struggle, nothing was disturbed. It was as if Min had simply vanished into thin air. They searched everywhere, calling Min's name into every nook and cranny of the forest. Their calls were lost in the vastness, only the chirping of birds responding. They searched throughout that day until sunset, which painted the entire forest red. They called the park rangers, the police, but no one found a single trace. Ming, their dear friend, had disappeared without a word. Many years passed. Thach-an Forest still stood, silent and mysterious. Lin, Nam, and Huang still often returned to the forest, each time a futile search, a nostalgic remembrance of their lost friend. The pain had lessened with time, but the loss remained, lingering in their hearts. Lin became a botanist, spending much of her time in pristine forests, as if searching for an answer in every leaf, every tree trunk. Nam became an architect, designing homes that blended with nature, always striving to bring the breath of the forest into every structure. Huang became a music teacher. She still played the guitar, but her melodies now carried a certain haunting quality, as if telling a sad story. They never forgot Min. Every year, on the anniversary of Min's disappearance, they would gather again in Thach-an Forest, light a small campfire, and recount stories about Min. One autumn evening, nearly 10 years after Min's disappearance, the three friends gathered again at their old campsite. The leaves had turned golden, falling gently to form a soft carpet beneath their feet. A gentle breeze blew through, carrying the chill of the mountains. "It's strange," Huang murmured. "I still feel like Min is somewhere around here." Lin nodded. "Me too. As if the forest is holding some secret about him." That night, as they sat around the campfire, a peculiar phenomenon began to occur. The fireflies, instead of their usual flickering, suddenly gathered into strange, swirling shapes in the air. They formed soft outlines, like drawings made of light, and then dissolved again. "Look!" Nam gasped softly. A larger, brighter stream of fireflies began to swirl around a large ancient tree nearby. This ancient tree was a symbol of the forest, with its gnarled trunk and branches reaching high like arms embracing the sky. The stream of fireflies began to form a familiar image. It was the shape of a music box with delicate, intricate lines. And then, from the image of the luminous music box, a melodious, clear sound emerged. It was the tune Min often played on, his guitar, the melody of the song about adventures, about friendship. The three friends were stunned. Tears began to stream down Lin's cheeks. It couldn't be a coincidence. "Min!" Lin whispered. Her voice choked. The music from the light-formed music box grew clearer and closer. It wasn't a physical sound, but a sensation, a vibration in the air, as if the forest itself was singing. Then something even more miraculous happened. From the trunk of the ancient tree, where the luminous music box image shimmered, a soft, ethereal blue-green glow began to emanate. The light was not blinding, but gentle and soothing, like moonlight. Within the light, a faint figure began to emerge. It was a tall figure with a familiar silhouette. Lin's heart pounded. The figure slowly became clearer. It was Min. He stood there, still with his gentle smile and dreamy eyes. But there was a difference. Around him were tiny golden specks, sparkling like miniature stars. He wasn't wearing ordinary clothes, but a cloak of deep green, blending with the colors of the forest. Min said nothing. He simply smiled, a peaceful and serene smile. He extended his hand, gently waving to his three friends. Then he slowly raised a small object. It was a music box made of ebony wood, exquisitely carved. The music box emitted the blue-green light, and from within it, the familiar melody still hummed. As if in answer to all their questions, Min softly parted his lips, but no sound came out. Instead, words appeared in their minds, as if he were communicating telepathically. "Hello, my friends," Min spoke in their minds. "I didn't disappear. I entered another world, a world deep within this forest, a world of ancient spirits, of dreams, and of nature's symphonies." Min explained that on that fateful night, as he drifted to sleep, He had heard a call from deep within the forest, a wordless call yet full of allure. He had followed that call and discovered an invisible gateway hidden within the heart of the ancient tree. That gateway led him to a place he called the Land of Echoes, where time flowed to a different rhythm, where the spirits of the forest dwelled. He had lived there, learning from the light beings, the guardians of the forest. They had taught him how to listen to the song of the trees, how to understand the language of the wind, and how to merge with the flow of nature. He couldn't return to the human world, but he could communicate with them through signs, the strange phenomena they had witnessed throughout the years. The haunting melodies carried on the wind, the out-of-season blooms, the giant firefly-like lights, all were Min's messages, his way of showing that he was still there, still a part of the forest and of their lives. The music box in Min's hand was a gift from the Land of Echoes. It was not just an instrument, but a musical gateway that could connect two worlds. Whenever they played Min's melody, the music box would resonate, and Min would be able to feel their presence and vice versa. Don't worry about me. Min's message resonated. I am happy here. I have found my purpose as a guardian of the forest, as the rhythm of dreams. Live well, my friends. Continue to explore this world and never stop believing in miracles. He looked at Lin, Nam, and Huang once more, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. Then the blue-green light slowly faded. Min's figure gradually dissolved into the ancient tree trunk, blending with the glittering golden specks. The ebony music box also vanished with him, leaving only its melodious sound still lingering in the air. The three friends stood there, enveloped in silence. Tears still clung to their eyelashes, but now they were not tears of sorrow, but tears of relief, of happiness in knowing that Min was safe and had found his rightful place. They no longer felt the pain of loss. Instead, they felt a deeper connection to the forest, to nature, and to Min himself. The forest was no longer a place of fear, but a place of wondrous mysteries, of ancient spirits, and of eternal dreams. From that night on, whenever they returned to Thach An Forest, Lin, Nam, and Huang carried a sense of peace. They no longer searched for Min. Instead, they listened. They listened to the rustle of the wind through the leaves, to the singing of the stream, and to the beating of their own hearts in sync with the forest. They knew that Min was still there, still a part of the forest, still a part of their lives. And sometimes, on full moon nights, when the forest was in its deepest slumber, they would hear the melodious tune of the music box echoing from afar. It was Min's melody, the melody of the Land of Echoes, a gentle lullaby for weary souls, a reminder that miracles always exist if only we are willing to listen and believe. They understood that Min's disappearance was not an end, but a beginning of a new journey, a new understanding of the world, and an unwavering faith in the mysterious and beautiful things in life. In the tranquil darkness of the forest, the cicadas began to chirp again, blending with the gentle gurgle of the stream. Night descended, covering everything with a soft, velvety blanket. The three friends returned to their tents, their hearts filled with serenity. They closed their eyes, letting the melody of the music box and the image of Min in the peaceful blue-green light guide them into a deep sleep. It was a sleep of tranquility, of belief, and of beautiful dreams about a world full of wonder. The Whispering House of Leaves. The An family, Lam, Mai, and their little daughter, An Nien, stood before the Whispering House. This wasn't a name they'd given it, but rather the name the villagers whispered whenever they spoke of the ancient dwelling nestled within its overgrown garden. The house, built a century ago, boasted classical French architecture, with large windows and wrought iron balconies draped in climbing vines. Lam, an architect with a love for classic beauty, had fallen for the house at first sight. Mai, an artist, was drawn to the expansive garden, where she envisioned endless colors and inspiration. And An Nien, the 6-year-old with jet-black hair and wide, round eyes, immediately felt a strange familiarity with the place, as if the house itself was inviting her to explore. They had just moved here from the bustling city, seeking a quieter space, a slower pace of life. The Whispering House seemed like the perfect choice, despite a few rumors about its peculiarities. But Lam and Mai, with their artistic and free spirits, weren't deterred. They believed in hidden beauty more than idle gossip. On their first afternoon, golden sunlight streamed through the ancient trees in the garden, scattering shimmering spots onto the old brick paths. And Nien ran around, her bare feet touching the soft grass. She paused before a rose bush covered in buds and gently touched a half-opened blossom. Immediately, a soft, pure fragrance wafted through the air, unlike any flower she had ever smelled. The scent was like a gentle greeting, making An Nien smile faintly. Their first night passed peacefully. Moonlight streamed through the large window, painting intricate patterns on the floor. The nocturnal insects chirped from the garden, forming a natural symphony. Mai felt a profound sense of peace, a feeling she rarely experienced in the city. The next morning, as Lam was making coffee in the kitchen, he heard an odd sound. It wasn't the sound of something falling or the wind rattling a door. It was a gentle hum, like the tinkling of a crystal wind chime. He followed the sound and found it emanating from the living room, where an old, heavy wooden table and chair sat. The hum seemed to come from the air itself, soft as a breath. Lam was surprised, looking around but seeing nothing that could produce such a sound. He smiled, thinking it might just be the wind through a crack in the door. But the hum carried a strange beauty that made him feel relaxed. A few days later, the peculiarities began to occur more frequently. Mai was painting in the living room when a sudden warmth spread through the room, as if a gentle aura was embracing her. The light in the room also seemed to become more luminous, with tiny dust motes in the air, suddenly reflecting the light like minuscule diamonds. Mai softly closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, feeling a strange connection to this space. She believed it was the positive energy of the house, something truly special. And Nien was the one who perceived these things most clearly. She often told her parents about the light friends she saw. "They're like giant fireflies, Mom and Dad," An Nien said, her eyes sparkling. "They fly around me and they sing beautiful songs for me." Lam and Mai smiled, thinking it was the rich imagination of a child. But they also noticed that An Nien was happier, more active since they moved here. One evening, as the family was reading in the living room, they heard soft footsteps on the wooden staircase. The footsteps were steady, unhurried, like someone taking a leisurely stroll. Lam and Mai exchanged glances. There was no one else in the house. Lam went upstairs, but saw no one. The footsteps seemed to vanish into thin air. Instead of fear, they felt a gentle curiosity. "It's probably just the old house creaking," Lam said, but a peculiar excitement stirred within him. These signs were never bothersome or frightening. On the contrary, they brought a sense of mystery and peace. Sometimes they found small items inexplicably moved, a half-read book neatly placed on a table, a shawl automatically folded. Everything was tidy, as if someone was quietly tending to the house. Mai began to paint pictures of the house, not ordinary still lifes, but canvases depicting streams of light, glittering golden dust, and faint images of flowers she had never seen. She believed these were the images the house wanted to tell her, the secrets it wished to share. Lam began researching the history of the house. He found old documents, records of a woman named Ba An Ha, a botanist who lived there in the 19th century. Ba-an-ha was renowned for her intense love of nature and her ability to speak to plants. Villagers said she could make flowers bloom out of season, and her garden was always filled with unusual plants. There were rumors that Ba-an-ha had discovered a special life energy hidden within the land, an energy that connected all living things. Lam began to believe that the phenomena they were experiencing were not hauntings, but manifestations of that very energy, and perhaps even the spirit of Ba-an-ha, a benevolent soul who loved nature. One night, Anien couldn't sleep. She heard a gentle whisper from the garden. It wasn't the wind, but a series of sounds like stories told by rustling leaves. Curious, she softly opened her room door and stepped onto the balcony. Under the silvery moonlight, the garden appeared magically ethereal. The bushes and foliage seemed to emit a soft glow. And then Anien saw them. The dark shadows her parents once thought were frightening now appeared as streams of blue-green and indigo light, gliding between tree trunks, swirling like ribbons. They weren't eerie shadows, but light entities, the spirits of trees and flowers dancing in the night. The whisper from the leaves grew clearer, as if they were recounting ancient tales of the garden, of Ba-an-ha, and of the life energy Lam had found in his books. And Nien felt a deep connection, an understanding beyond language. She wasn't afraid. Instead, she felt incredibly peaceful and happy. She knew she had found her true friends here. She fell asleep on the balcony, cradled by the whispering of the leaves and the shimmering light of the garden. The next morning, Lam and Mai found Anien sound asleep, a smile still gracing her cheek. From that night on, the phenomena in the house were no longer peculiar, but became a familiar, cherished part of the family's life. The hum of the crystal wind chime became the sound signaling a beautiful morning. The shimmering light and golden dust became endless inspiration for Mai's paintings. The soft footsteps on the stairs became a reminder of the presence of a benevolent spirit protecting the house. They no longer felt haunted or driven to the brink of madness. On the contrary, they felt the house embracing them, sharing its ancient secrets, and guiding them to a deeper understanding of the natural world. They realized that the so-called dark history was actually a treasure trove of mysterious tales, of souls who loved life. The Whispering House was not a haunted house, but a living house, a breathing house, a house with a soul. It was a gateway to another dimension where humans could connect with nature in the most profound way. Lam spent his time revitalizing the garden, not according to his own design, but according to the guidance of the house. He listened to the wind, the birds, and even the whispers from the leaves. He planted the species of trees that Ba-an-ha had once loved, and the garden gradually became a vibrant tapestry, a symphony of colors and fragrances. Mai opened an art class right in their home. Her students not only learned to paint, but also to feel, to listen, and to see the hidden beauty in the simplest things. They were captivated by the peaceful energy emanating from the house and garden. And Nien grew up in the embrace of the house, the garden, and her light friends. She became a profound nature lover, one who could perceive the most subtle vibrations of life. She still often sat on the balcony on full moon nights, listening to the whispers of the leaves and gazing at the streams of light dancing in the garden. The Ann family had found their true home in the Whispering House. They not only found a place to live, but they also found a new way of living, a new connection to the world, and a deep belief in the wonders that life bestows. The Whispering House was no longer a frightening mystery, but a peaceful sanctuary, an eternal lullaby for souls seeking tranquility. Every night, as the lights went out and darkness descended, the house would begin to tell its own stories through the humming of the wind, the rustling of leaves, and the streams of light dancing in the dark. These were stories of love, of life, and of beautiful dreams that never fade. The wind chime from distant memories. Night fell, bringing a thin mist that veiled the window pane. In the cozy living room, Anne, a sensitive young composer, sat by her old piano. Her fingers glided gently over the keys, weaving a melancholic melody that stirred distant memories. Her brother, Coy, had passed away a year ago. He was the one who taught Anne to play, always supporting and inspiring her. His loss remained a profound void in Anne's heart, a deep sorrow that time had yet to fully heal. On the coffee table nearby, Anne's phone suddenly vibrated, its screen lighting up with an incoming call. Anne glanced at it, then froze. It was Coy's number. A cold shiver ran down Anne's spine, but it wasn't fear. It was disbelief, utter astonishment. She immediately thought of a system error or a tasteless prank. But then a strange surge of emotion welled up, an inexplicable urge that made her hesitate. The phone continued to ring steadily. Anne took a deep breath, then slowly reached out and pressed the answer button. "Hello?" Anne's voice trembled slightly. There was no voice, only an absolute silence on the other end, strangely quiet, as if the entire universe had held its breath. Anne was about to hang up, but then a faint sound reached her ears. It wasn't a voice, but a gentle hum, like the sound of a wind chime made from crystal shards clinking together on a breezy afternoon. The sound was strangely familiar, reminding Anne of evenings Coy used to play his guitar by the window and the wind chime hanging on the porch of their old home. Anne clutched the phone tightly, her heart pounding. She felt a peculiar warmth spreading from the phone, seeping into her palm, then throughout her entire body. It wasn't frightening, but incredibly peaceful, like a gentle embrace. After about 10 seconds, the call disconnected automatically. Anne stared at her phone screen, where Coy's number was still displayed in her call history. What was this? A dream? Or a sign? She decided not to dwell on it too much, simply put the phone away and returned to the piano. But the melody she played now was no longer sad. It carried something mysterious and full of hope. A few days later, the strange messages began to appear. They weren't chilling text messages, but small, seemingly coincidental occurrences that held deep meaning for Anne. One morning, as Anne sat in her small recording studio, she opened her computer and saw a new folder on her desktop. It was titled Wind Chime Memories, and couldn't recall creating this folder. She clicked on it, and inside was a series of old recordings. These were recordings of Coy playing his guitar, melodies he had composed himself, and even segments where he practiced singing with Anne when they were children. The audio quality wasn't perfect, with some static, but every note, every line, sung, felt like a cool breeze sweeping through Anne's soul. What was especially unique was that in every recording, Anne could hear the familiar sound of the wind chime, sometimes distant, sometimes clearer, blending with Coy's guitar. Anne felt. A warmth spread through her chest. She began to believe that these messages were from Coy, a way he was communicating with her from somewhere. Anne's life slowly transformed. She no longer wallowed in the grief of loss. Instead, she embarked on a journey to uncover the mysteries Coy was entrusting to her. One night, Anne received another call from Coy's number. This time, Anne was no longer startled. She calmly pressed the answer button. It was still the humming of the wind chime, but this time, it was interspersed with the whispers of a familiar melody that Anne couldn't immediately identify. The melody repeated over and over, like a persistent reminder. Anne closed her eyes, listening intently. The tune led her mind back to her childhood days, to their old house, to the garden with its vibrant bougainvillea. The next morning, Anne decided to return to their old house, the one they had sold after Coy passed. The house now had new owners, But the garden was still there, and especially the bougainvillea tree Coy loved still bloomed brightly. Anne walked around the garden, feeling every breeze, every ray of sunlight. And then she stopped in a secluded corner of the garden where a small moss-covered stone pedestal stood. On the pedestal there was a small nook cleverly hidden by the foliage. Curious Anne reached inside. She touched something cold and smooth. She pulled it out. It was an old wooden box, intricately carved with birds and vines. Anne opened the box. Inside was a rolled-up piece of old parchment and a silver necklace with a tiny wind chime pendant. Anne gently unrolled the parchment. It was a letter in Coy's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Anne," the letter began, Coy's voice clear in Anne's mind. "If you are reading this letter, it means you've found my secret box. I knew you would find it because you've always understood me best." The letter spoke of a secret Coy had harbored for a long time. It wasn't a terrible secret, but an unfinished dream, a spiritual legacy he wanted to leave for Anne. Coy had spent years researching sound and the connection between sound and nature. He believed that every living thing, every space, had its own unique melody, a distinctive vibrational frequency. He had discovered that the sound of a wind chime wasn't just metal colliding, but the singing of the wind, the singing of space. He had dedicated his life to creating a special kind of wind chime, a memory wind chime, capable of capturing and replaying sounds, emotions, and even memories from those who had once lived there. In the letter, Coy explained that the small wind chime on the necklace was part of his larger project, and the calls, the strange messages Anne received, were not from the dead, but were streams of memory energy that his wind chime had collected and transmitted. When Coy was alive, he had installed a sophisticated system within this wind chime, allowing it to send sound snippets, melodies, and even emotions to those with similar vibrational frequencies to him, which was Anne. He wrote that he wanted Anne to continue his work, to perfect the memory wind chime, so that everyone's beautiful stories and memories could be preserved forever, echoing through space. He wanted Anne to use her music to connect with these memories, to create symphonies of life, of love, and of eternal existence. At the end of the letter, Coy wrote, "Don't be sad anymore, my little sister. I haven't gone anywhere. I'm still here in the breezes, in the sound of the wind chime, and in every note you play. Just listen. You will feel me." And broke down, tears streaming down her face. But these were not tears of pain. They were tears of relief, of love, and of understanding. She had found her brother, not in a physical form, but through a deeper spiritual connection, and returned home, her heart overflowing with inspiration. She began to devote herself to studying Coy's recordings, his notes on sound and frequency. She realized that the recordings in the Wind Chime Memories folder were the most precious resources Coy had left behind. She began to compose new music, not just melodies, but symphonies of memory. She combined her piano playing with the wind chime sounds Coy had embedded, and sometimes she even used recordings of Coy's voice, snippets of him singing, him laughing, to incorporate into her works. Anne's music was not just music, it was storytelling. Every note was like a thread connecting to the past, bringing listeners back to beautiful moments, to forgotten memories. Everyone felt a strange peace, a sense of comfort and understanding when listening to her music. Success came naturally to Anne. Her music was warmly received, not just for its talent, but for the healing energy it brought. Anne became a bridge between the past and the present, between memories and dreams. And whenever Anne needed to feel Coy's presence, she just had to listen to the wind chime. Sometimes it was the familiar chime from his recordings. Sometimes it was the chime from the necklace around her neck. And sometimes it was the chime echoing from somewhere in space, like a whisper from another dimension, a reminder that love never dies and memories are eternal. The call from Coy's phone number was not a frightening sign, but an invitation from a world of memories. It didn't push Anne to the brink of madness. Instead, it opened a door for her to peace, understanding, and endless inspiration. Now, whenever Anne's phone rings with an unfamiliar number, or when she hears a strange sound, she is no longer afraid. She knows that it could be another memory reaching out to her, another story waiting to be told, another melody waiting to be born. And in the quiet depths of the night, as Anne sits by her piano, her fingers gently glide over the keys, creating new melodies. These melodies intertwine with the humming wind chime, forming a gentle symphony, a lullaby for weary souls. The wind chime echoes through space like a whisper from the past, a promise of the eternity of love and memory. And Anne drifts off to sleep with a peaceful smile on her lips, knowing that her brother is always by her side, in every note, in every dream. The hum of the Greenstone Lake. The town of Moonshadow, nestled by the mountainside, embraced by ancient forests and a tranquil, clear lake the locals called Greenstone Lake, for the shimmering pebbles at its bottom. Life in Moonshadow flowed as gently as a small stream, with slanted-roof wooden houses tucked beneath old trees, moss-covered cobblestone paths, and the kind smiles of its inhabitants. Our main character is Mai, a young woman who returned to Moonshadow after years of studying and working in the big city. Mai is a ceramic artist with a refined soul and eyes always seeking hidden beauty in the simplest things. She came back, not only to find peace for her soul, but also to inherit her grandmother's small pottery shop, whose passing had recently occurred. Mai's grandmother was a special woman. She was not only a talented ceramic artist, but also a wonderful storyteller, always weaving fairy tales about the forest, about Greenstone Lake, and about the spirits of nature. Mai loved every corner of this town, cherishing all the stories her grandmother had told. She found solace in the rustling of the wind through the leaves, in the chirping of birds in the early morning, and in the stillness of Greenstone Lake. One morning, as Mai was working in her pottery studio, something strange happened. The moonstone, necklace her grandmother always wore, something Mai kept carefully in a velvet box, suddenly vanished. Mai searched everywhere but couldn't find it. She thought perhaps she had carelessly left it somewhere. A few days later, another incident occurred. Old Mr. Bay, the kind ferryman of Greenstone Lake, recounted that his beloved oar, which he had used for decades, suddenly disappeared from its usual spot. Despite his thorough search, the oar seemed to have vanished into thin air. Mr. Bay merely smiled gently, attributing it to his old age and forgetfulness, but his eyes held an inexplicable curiosity. Similar stories began to spread throughout the town. Mrs. Tam, the owner of the fragrant bakery, said that the jasmine flowers she planted in front of her house, though wilted, miraculously bloomed fresh the next morning, as if just watered. Mr. 2, the quiet carpenter, found his tools neatly rearranged, even though he was certain he had left them in disarray. No one felt frightened or anxious. On the contrary, these occurrences brought an air of mystery and intrigue to the already peaceful town. The people of Moonshadow began to call these phenomena the pranks of the lake fairies, based on the fairy tales Mai's grandmother used to tell about mischievous spirits guarding Greenstone Lake. Mai began to feel drawn in. She remembered her grandmother's words. "Everything in Moonshadow has its own soul, Mai. You just need to know how to listen." She started spending more time by Greenstone Lake. Sitting by the shore, Mai felt a strange energy, a gentle vibration emanating from the water. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to listen to the voice of Greenstone Lake. One afternoon, as Mai was molding clay in her studio, she heard a melodious hum, not from a wind chime, but from somewhere far away, echoing from Greenstone Lake. The hum was soft, gentle, like an ancient melody. Mai placed her hand on the clay, her heart pounding. She closed her eyes, letting the melody guide her mind. In her dream, Mai found herself walking through a dense forest, where ancient trees stretched tall, touching the sky. Blue-green and indigo light pierced through the leaves, creating shimmering specks of light. She walked to a small waterfall where tiny water droplets sprayed into the air, forming a small rainbow. And then she saw them. Not dark shadows, but shimmering streaks of light, soft in form, swirling in the air. They were like luminous ribbons dancing around the waterfall. And from these streaks of light, the melodious hum resonated, precisely the tune Mai had heard. Upon waking, Mai felt a profound peace. She believed she had communicated with the lake fairies, the beings her grandmother often spoke of. She understood that these disappearances, or shifts, were not mischief, but a way the lake fairies were trying to communicate, trying to attract human attention. Mai began to observe the missing items more closely. Her grandmother's moonstone necklace, after a few days, reappeared on Mai's ancestral altar, neatly placed next to a blooming succulent lotus flower. Strangely, this flower should not bloom in this season. Mr. Bay's ore was later found in a small cave by the lake, with strangely intricate patterns carved onto its surface, patterns that had not been there before. Mai began to draw those patterns on her pottery. Each pattern was like a story, a message from the lake fairies. She created vases, cups, and small figurines with soft lines, inspired by the light streams and melodies she had heard. Mai's ceramic. Products were not only beautiful, but also exuded a strange, peaceful energy, making those who owned them feel relaxed and comfortable. She decided to share her story with the townspeople. Initially, they listened with mere curiosity. But as Mai began to explain the patterns, the meaning of each sign, and how she sensed the presence of the lake fairies, their eyes gradually filled with belief. They started to realize that these phenomena were not frightening at all, but a part of the wonder of moon shadow. The entire town began to change its perspective on the mysteries. Instead of feeling helpless, they began to learn how to listen. They spent more time at Greenstone Lake, not to search for lost items, but to feel its energy. They began to leave small items, symbolic gifts by the lake's edge, as a token of gratitude to the lake fairies. Mr. Bay, with his newly carved ore, began to tell tales of magical adventures on Greenstone Lake, where he encountered blue-green, streaks of light and succulent lotus flowers blooming in the middle of the night. Mrs. Tam believed her jasmine flowers were revived by the magic of the lake fairies, and she began to bake flower-shaped bread, sprinkling dried petals to offer to Greenstone Lake. Mai became the bridge between humans and the world of the lake fairies. She was not only a ceramic artist, but also a storyteller, an interpreter of unseen messages. She organized meditation sessions by the lake, where people could close their eyes, listen to the hum of Greenstone Lake, and feel the presence of the nature spirits. Life in Moonshadow became slower, more tranquil, yet also more colorful and meaningful. The townspeople were no longer caught up in material worries. They learned to cherish every moment, every bird song, every ray of sunlight. They realized that happiness wasn't about possessing many things, but about feeling connected to nature, to the wonders around them. And Greenstone Lake, with its shimmering pebbles at the bottom, became the center of peace and mystery. Its hum was not just the sound of water lapping the shore, but the song of the lake fairies, an eternal lullaby for the town of Moonshadow. As night descended, enveloping Moonshadow in a soft, velvety blanket, Mai often sat by her window, gazing at the moonlight illuminating the lake's surface. She heard the gentle hum, sometimes the rustling of leaves like whispers, sometimes the lapping of water like a soft symphony. She knew that the lake fairies were awake, protecting the town and telling their ancient stories. Mai closed her eyes, her heart filled with gratitude and peace. She felt she was a part of Moon Shadow, a part of this mystical story, and she drifted off to sleep, a peaceful smile on her face, lulled by the hum of Greenstone Lake, by the whispered tales of the lake fairies, and by the love of a small town where miracles always exist, if only we know how to listen. The Mirror of Memory Lake. In a sun-drenched attic apartment in the old quarter, where sloping rooftops leaned against each other like trusted companions, lived a young man named Lum. Lum was an installation artist with a soaring spirit and eyes that always saw the extraordinary in the everyday. He lived alone, surrounded by unfinished works, ethereal sketches, and antique trinkets he'd found in flea markets, each item carrying its own story. Lum's life flowed gently, until one day he discovered an old mirror in a small antique shop. The mirror had an intricately carved ebony frame, faded with time, yet its surface shimmered oddly. Something about it immediately captivated Lum, a stillness and depth he'd never seen in any other mirror. He bought it, placing it in a corner of his living room where the morning light could illuminate it. Initially, everything was normal. Lum looked into the mirror each morning, seeing only his own reflection, a young man with tousled hair and eyes sparkling with curiosity. But then, one particular morning, as he was combing his hair, he fleetingly saw a faint figure pass behind him in the mirror. The figure wasn't clear, just like a wisp of smoke, but it possessed a blurry beauty, like a soft morning mist. Lum startled, turning around, but no one was there. He thought it was just a trick of the light, or perhaps he was simply too tired. In the days that followed, the figure appeared more frequently. It wasn't scary, rather it was gentle and shimmering. Sometimes it was just a turquoise streak of light, swirling like a ribbon. Other times, it was tiny golden motes of dust, spiraling like miniature stars. Lum began to feel drawn in. He spent more time gazing into the mirror, not to admire himself, but to seek out that figure. He started recording what he saw in his sketchbook. He drew the soft outlines of the light streams, the glittering golden specks. He called it the prophetic shadow, because whenever it appeared, Lum felt a strange peace, a powerful creative urge. His artworks became more vibrant, imbued with an emotional depth they hadn't possessed before. One evening, as the silvery moonlight illuminated the room, Lum sat before the mirror. The prophetic shadow appeared, clearer than ever. It wasn't a human figure, but a collection of light and color, shimmering like myriad dancing moths. From the center of the shadow, a blue-green light began to emanate, like a small gateway slowly opening. And then Lum heard a gentle hum, not with his ears, but with his mind. It was a melodious tune, like the flowing of a stream, the rustling of leaves, and the whispering of the wind harmonizing together. The melody was inviting, captivating, like a soft lullaby. Lum reached out and touched the surface of the mirror. Strangely, the surface wasn't cold like glass, but warm and soft, like a faint mist. His fingers glided through the mirror, and a miraculous thing happened. His hand seemed to pass through a layer of air, encountering no resistance. Lum felt no fear. His heart beat softly, filled with curiosity. He recalled the fairy tales his grandmother used to tell about hidden gateways in ordinary objects. Gateways leading to other worlds. He took a deep breath, then slowly stepped into the mirror. There was no sensation of dizziness or shock. Lum simply felt as if he were floating in an undefined space, surrounded by shimmering lights and the melodious There was no gravity here, no time, only absolute peace. When Lam opened his eyes, he found himself standing in a forest of light. The trees here were not ordinary wooden trees, but translucent crystal trunks, radiating green, purple, and yellow light. The leaves were glowing butterflies, fluttering gently. Beneath his feet was a soft carpet made of threads of light. Before him lay a crystal-clear lake, its surface as calm as a giant mirror. The lake reflected a sky full of shimmering stars, but the stars here were much larger, much more brilliant. Lam walked closer to the lake, bending down to look. And he saw his own reflection, but it wasn't the Lam of the real world. It was a version of himself with brighter eyes, a more serene smile, and a mystical glow surrounding him. From the surface of the lake, the prophetic shadow appeared again. This time, it was clearer than ever, and it took the form of a woman with long hair shimmering like the Milky Way, her eyes as deep as the universe. She didn't speak, but Lam felt her thoughts transmitted directly into his mind. "Welcome, Seeker," the voice echoed in Lam's mind. "I am Memory, the spirit of forgotten things, the guardian of this world. You have found the lake of memories, where dreams, emotions, and untold stories are preserved." Memory explained that the mirror wasn't an ordinary object, but an ancient energy portal, created by those who had once lived in this attic apartment, people who had the ability to connect deeply with their inner world and other dimensions. The mirror was a gateway to the world of memories and Lam's own hidden potentials. The prophetic shadow he saw was not an external entity, but a part of his own soul, an aspect of himself he had yet to explore. Every time Lam looked into the mirror, he had unconsciously awakened that part of his memory and potential. The signs he saw were his soul's way of trying to communicate, inviting him on a journey of self-discovery. Memory led Lam on a stroll around the lake of memories. She showed him the shimmering streaks of light in the lake. These were the memories, the emotions of those who had once lived here. Lam touched a red streak of light, and immediately he felt a warm emotion. It was his grandmother's love for him when he was a child. He touched a blue streak of light, and he saw an image of Koi, his brother, laughing by the piano. Lam understood that his life, his memories, and even his unfulfilled dreams were preserved here, in this lake of memories. He wasn't haunted by anything frightening. Instead, he was connecting with himself, with the deepest parts of his soul. Memory said, "You can stay here as long as you wish. Listen to the stories, explore your own potentials. When you are ready, the lake of memories will bring you back." Lam spent many days, perhaps weeks, in that world of light. He listened to the melodies from the lake of memories, which continuously hummed their stories. He learned how to paint with light, how to touch the emotions of memories. He felt an absolute peace, a profound understanding of himself and the universe. When he felt ready, Lam returned to the lake of memories. He looked at his reflection, and this time he saw his eyes sparkling with enlightenment, a serene smile. He knew he had found an important part of himself. He reached out and touched the surface of the lake, and immediately he felt a gentle energy envelop him. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, he was back in his living room, sitting before the old mirror. The morning sun was still shining in, and everything was just as it had been. But Lam had changed. He was no longer the Lam he was before. He felt a deep peace, a strong connection to the world around him. He looked into the mirror and saw his own reflection clearer, brighter, surrounded by a mystical glow. The prophetic shadow was no longer a faint streak of light, but a part of him, a light radiating from within. Lam began to create new artworks, pieces that were not only beautiful, but also capable of touching the souls of viewers. He used the images, colors, and even melodies he had experienced in the Lake of Memories to infuse into his work. His art possessed a surreal beauty, a connection to the mystical that everyone could feel. He became a beloved artist, not just for his talent, but for the peace and positive energy he brought. He often shared the story of the mirror and the lake, of memories with his close friends, not as a scary tale, but as a journey of self-discovery. And whenever he needed to find peace again, he would sit before the mirror. He didn't need to step inside. He just needed to look into it and listen to the hum of the Lake of Memories, the song of his soul. That hum echoed through space like a gentle lullaby, a reminder of the eternity of dreams and memories. In the tranquil darkness of the night, when everything fell asleep, Lum would still sit there, his eyes gently closed, listening. The hum from the mirror was steady, gentle, like a lullaby from the vast universe. And Lum drifted off to sleep, with a serene smile on his lips, knowing that he had found his own world, a world of light, memories, and eternal peace. The Symphony of the Thousand-Year Song. In the valley of floating clouds, hidden behind misty mountain peaks and ancient thousand-year-old forests, lay a peculiar archaeological site. It wasn't ancient temples or fortresses, but a vast limestone expanse where strangely shaped rock formations were arranged in a mysterious order. Local villagers called this place the Singing Stone Valley, because sometimes, on full moon nights, they would hear melodious sounds echoing from deep within the earth, like a chorus of wind and stone. Dr. Mai An, a young archaeologist with bright eyes and a passionate soul, led a small research team to the Singing Stone Valley. Mai An wasn't just a scientist. She was also a talented violinist, always believing there was a deep connection between science and art, between physical formulas and the melodies of the universe. Accompanying her were Nam, a quiet sound engineer with the ability to perceive the most subtle vibrations, and Lin, a vibrant botanist who always found beauty in every leaf, every branch. Their goal was to unravel the mystery of the singing stones. Mai An believed they were not merely natural formations, but a form of ancient construction, possibly related to a vanished civilization. The first few days of excavation passed peacefully. Morning sunlight pierced through the early mist, creating an ethereal scene. Birds chirped, streams gurgled, harmonizing with the steady rhythm of shovels digging earth. A profound sense of peace enveloped the archaeological site, a rare tranquility. One afternoon, as Mai An was meticulously brushing away layers of soil and rock from a large stone shaped like a giant harp, she touched a small crevice. Immediately, a cool yet not frightening gust of air, with a gentle fragrance of earth and dew, emanated from the crack. Simultaneously, a very faint hum resonated from deep within the stone. The hum wasn't loud, but it filled the space, making Mai An feel a profound vibration in her chest. "Can everyone hear that?" Mai An whispered. Nam, with the acute hearing of a sound engineer, nodded. "Yes." A very low frequency, but clear. It's almost like the stone's breath. Lin, busy collecting plant samples nearby, also turned, her eyes filled with curiosity. "It has a very natural feel, like the echo of the mountains and forests." From that moment on, peculiar phenomena began to emerge. They weren't harmful or frightening, but rather held a mystical beauty, like invisible brushstrokes of an unseen artist. Every early morning, when the mist still lingered, the stones surrounding the stone harp would suddenly emit a soft glow. The light wasn't dazzling, but gentle, with shades of jade green, deep indigo, and amber, shimmering like colossal gemstones breathing. These streams of light moved slowly across the stone surfaces, forming abstract patterns, as if ancient characters were being rewritten. Nam quickly recorded the vibrations and sound frequencies from the stones. He discovered that each stone possessed its own melody, and when they sang together, they formed a complex symphony, an ancient symphony. Strangely, this symphony seemed to interact with its surroundings. For instance, one evening, as the research team sat around a campfire, Mai An softly played her violin. Instantly, the flickering flames became more brilliant, and the flying embers didn't dissipate but swirled, forming glowing spirals like tiny galaxies dancing in the night. At the same time, wildflowers around the campsite, which had been withered, suddenly burst into fresh, incredibly vibrant blooms. Lin rushed over, her eyes sparkling with astonishment. This can't be explained by science," she whispered. Mysterious shifts also occurred. Their archaeological tools, which had been left in disarray, were suddenly neatly arranged. Each morning, small stones rolled from their original positions to form perfect circles around the excavation site. There were no signs of vandalism, only delicate arrangement. Mai An, with her artistic soul, began to believe that they had not unleashed a curse, but had instead awakened something sacred, an ancient wisdom hidden deep within the Singing Stone Valley. She recalled stories of ancient civilizations capable of using sound and vibration to influence matter and energy. They found an ancient stone map, intricately carved into a nearby cave wall. The map not only showed pathways, but also ancient musical notations. Mai An, with her knowledge of music, gradually deciphered these symbols. They formed a sequence of notes, a 1,000-year song, which, if played correctly, could fully activate the energy of the Singing Stone Valley. That night, under the brilliant full moon, the research team gathered by the enormous stone harp. Mai An rested her violin on her shoulder. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to play. The first notes rang out, soft as a whispered breeze. Immediately, the surrounding stones began to emit a stronger light. Streams of jade green, deep indigo, and amber light swirling and dancing in the air. The hum from deep within the earth became clearer, blending with Mai An's violin, forming a majestic and mystical symphony. As the melody reached its crescendo, a colossal pillar of light from deep within the stone harp shot straight up into the night sky, illuminating the entire valley. There was no frightening or overwhelming sensation. Instead, a warm, pure energy diffused everywhere, enveloping Mai An and her team. They felt a profound connection to nature, to the universe, as if they had merged into an eternal flow. In that moment, their minds were filled with images and emotions. They saw visions of an ancient civilization that once lived here, people who didn't use technology but used sound and vibration to build, to heal, and to communicate with nature. They didn't die. They had merged into the energy of the Singing Stone Valley, becoming part of the ancient symphony. When the symphony ended, the pillar of light gradually faded. The stones stopped glowing, but the air still held a wondrous tranquility. Mai An and her team opened their eyes. They didn't feel tired or exhausted, but rather energized and peaceful. They understood that what they had unleashed was not a curse, but a legacy of knowledge, a reminder of the harmony between humanity and nature. The mysterious deaths that villagers once rumored were perhaps just a dissolution into the energy flow of the Singing Stone Valley, a return to the source. From that day on, the Singing Stone Valley was no longer a mysterious archaeological site, but a center of healing and inspiration. Mai An and her team decided to stay in Moon Shadow. They didn't excavate further, but spent their time researching and sharing what they had discovered. Mai An still often played her violin by the stone harp, and each time she played, the stones would softly hum along, creating a unique symphony. Nam continued his research into sound frequencies, discovering healing melodies that could help people relax and find peace. Lynn dedicated her time to planting special flowers around the Singing Stone Valley, flowers that were activated by the energy of the stones, blooming with unusual colors and fragrances. The people of Moon Shadow now whispered not of a curse, but of the blessing of the Singing Stone Valley. They learned to listen to the hum of the stones, to feel the energy of nature. Their lives became slower, more meaningful, and filled with gratitude. And in the tranquil depths of the night, when everything fell into deep sleep, the melodious hum from the Singing Stone Valley would echo. It was the song of the ancient stones, Mai-On's violin, and the whispers of the wind, blending together to form a gentle symphony, a lullaby for weary souls. It was a 1,000-year song of harmony, of the eternal beauty of the universe, and of secrets still waiting to be discovered. The Labyrinth of Crystal Dreams. In a cozy attic room where moonlight gently filtered through a small window, painting silver streaks on the wooden floor, lived a young woman named Lai. Lai was an illustrator with a vivid imagination and a sensitive soul, easily lost in the world of fairy tales and legends. Lai's daily life was peaceful, except for one thing: her dreams. For many nights in a row, Lai had the same dream. It wasn't frightening at all. Rather, it was incredibly mysterious and captivating. She always found herself standing in the middle of a vast, desolate place, an endless meadow covered in tall, shimmering grasses under a strange light. The sky wasn't the familiar blue, but a constantly shifting spectrum of colors, from the deep purple of dusk to the jade green of dawn, sometimes sparkling with golden and silver hues like distant stars. In the distance, she always saw an ethereal entity. It had no specific form, just a flickering stream of light, sometimes resembling a delicate wisp of smoke, other times a small luminous cloud. It wasn't frightening in the slightest, but radiated a sense of ancient stillness and wisdom, as if it had existed for thousands of years. Whenever Lai tried to approach it, the entity would recede, but its light seemed to beckon, to guide. This dream recurred every night, with details becoming increasingly vivid and realistic. Lai could feel the gentle fragrance of strange flowers in the meadow, hear the wind whispering ancient melodies, and feel the softness of the grasses touching her feet. She began to keep a dream journal, sketching the landscapes, the colors, and the emotions she experienced. Initially, Lai thought it was just her overly rich imagination, but then strange things began to happen even when she was awake. She started noticing faint, shimmering reflections on shiny surfaces, a turquoise streak gliding across her phone screen, tiny golden dust motes swirling in the air, or a brief moment when her face in the mirror suddenly held a strange beauty. As if enveloped by a glowing mist, Lai began to devote more time to drawing. She depicted the scenes from her dreams, the shimmering grasses, the shifting sky, and the mysterious light entity. Her drawings became strangely alive, as if inspired by a real world. One night, the dream returned. This time, as Lai stood in the meadow, the light entity no longer receded. It slowly approached and began to transform. It wasn't a frightening shape, but a magical creature, resembling a pure white deer, with fur made of light and crystal antlers radiating all the colors of the rainbow. Its eyes were deep and benevolent, reflecting the entire dream sky. The creature didn't speak, but Lai felt a message resonate in her mind. "You have found us, dreamer. This is the Crystal Labyrinth, where the unspun dreams and forgotten memories of the universe are preserved. You are not the only one who sees us." The light entity led Lai deeper into the Crystal Labyrinth. She saw rivers of light flowing through crystal valleys, mountains made of shimmering gemstones, and in every place she saw dreams being woven. Streams of light in all colors, swirling and transforming into images, into stories. These were the dreams of those who had lived, those who were living, and even the dreams of other beings. The light entity explained that the crystal labyrinth was a dimension existing parallel to the real world, a library of consciousness. Every time humans dreamed, a part of their soul would connect with the crystal labyrinth, and the dreams were the stories, the messages sent from this world. The entity Lai saw was the Dream Weaver, an ancient spirit formed from dreams themselves, whose task was to protect and guide those with special abilities to explore the crystal labyrinth. The Dreamweaver told Lai that she possessed a rare ability. She could see and interact directly with the crystal labyrinth, not just as a dream, but as another reality. The faint, shimmering reflections Lai saw while awake were signs of the growing connection between her and the crystal labyrinth. The Dreamweaver led Lai to a special area within the crystal labyrinth, where there was a clear lake, its bottom sparkling with multicolored crystals. This lake was called the Lake of Forgotten Memories. The Dreamweaver explained that this was where memories, emotions, and even unfulfilled dreams of those who had once existed, but had been faded by time, were preserved. Lai touched the surface of the lake, and immediately a warm light enveloped her. Images began to appear in her mind. Ancient scenes of a vanished civilization, unfamiliar faces that felt strangely familiar, gentle melodies of a song she had never heard. She realized that these were the memories of those who had lived in Moon Shadow thousands of years ago, people who shared the same ability to connect with the crystal labyrinth as she did. When Lai awoke the next morning, she felt a profound peace and a new understanding of herself. The dream was no longer a mystery to be solved, but a gateway to a wondrous world. She knew that the crystal labyrinth was not a frightening place, but a treasure trove of knowledge and emotion. Lai began to change her artistic approach. She not only depicted what she saw in her dreams, but also tried to convey the emotions and messages she received from the crystal labyrinth. She painted luminous artworks with shifting colors and ethereal images, as if each painting was a slice from the crystal labyrinth. Lai's works quickly attracted attention. Everyone felt a strange peace, a deep connection to their inner world when looking at her paintings. They felt as if the paintings were singing stories to them, reminding them of their own forgotten dreams. Lai also began to meditate every night before sleeping, not to try to dream, but to prepare her mind for the journey to explore the crystal labyrinth. She learned to listen to the whispers of the Dream Weaver, to feel the vibrations of the lake of forgotten memories. Lai's nights were no longer mere sleep, but magical adventures. She learned many things about the history of consciousness, about the connection between all things, and about the limitless potential of the human soul. She knew that the crystal labyrinth was a part of her, and she was a part of the crystal labyrinth. And sometimes, in moments of wakefulness, Lai still saw faint, shimmering reflections in mirrors, on water surfaces, or even in the eyes of those around her. She knew these were signs from the crystal labyrinth, reminders that the wondrous world always exists parallel to the real one, if only we know how to listen and open our hearts. Lai's life became more meaningful, filled with inspiration and peace. She no longer felt alone. She knew she had another world to explore, unseen friends to communicate with, and a mission to convey the beauty of dreams to everyone. In the tranquil depths of the night, when the silver moonlight still lingered on the window, Lai lay in bed, her eyes gently closed. She felt the presence of the Dream Weaver, felt the gentle hum from the lake of forgotten memories. The grasses in the crystal meadow shimmered again. The sky shifted colors, and Lai drifted off to sleep with a serene smile on her lips, lulled by the melody of the crystal labyrinth, by the stories of forgotten memories, and by the love of a mystical world, where dreams are never just dreams. The figure under the gentle moonlight. Night descended, cloaking the long road through the suburbs in an ethereal velvet curtain. Only the headlights of Koa's old blue pickup truck pierced the darkness, illuminating the trees lining the road, and the wild grasses swaying in the wind. Koa was a freelance photographer with a wandering spirit and eyes always seeking beautiful moments hidden in stillness. This trip was a long journey to visit family in a rural province, a trip he had taken countless times, but tonight felt strangely different. Koa turned on the radio, and soft jazz music gently filled the space. He leaned back in his seat, leisurely gazing at the twinkling stars in the inky black sky. Far off, a few small houses nestled under the trees, their warm yellow lights casting a peaceful glow. As the truck passed a deserted stretch of road without a single light or soul, Koa suddenly saw a faint figure standing by the roadside. It was a woman, but her form was indistinct, as if she were made of misty threads under the moonlight. She stood there, her back to Koa's truck, her long hair gently swaying in the breeze. There was something captivating about her, a strange stillness that wasn't at all frightening. Koa slowed down, but just as he managed to get a clearer look, the figure vanished, dissolving into the night as if she had never existed. Koa shook his head, smiling. "I must be tired," he thought, assuming it was just an illusion, a product of fatigue after a long day of driving. He continued his journey. Then, about 30 minutes later, after driving several miles and passing a small town slumbering in the dark, Koa saw her again. This time, she stood beside a harvested rice field, the moonlight illuminating her slender form. She still had her back to him, but this time, her hair seemed to emit a soft, jade-green glow, shimmering like dewdrops in the night. Koa gasped, hitting the brakes. The truck screeched to a halt. He stared at the figure, his heart pounding, but not from fear, but from a sense of profound astonishment and curiosity. "Who is she?" Koa wondered. The figure remained motionless, like a living statue. She didn't stir, didn't turn around. Koa reached out, trying to touch her through the car window, as if to confirm her existence. But then, just as his hand touched the glass, the figure vanished again, leaving behind only a faint scent of jasmine in the air. This phenomenon repeated several more times during the night. Each time, the figure appeared in a different location, but always by the roadside, with her back turned and always disappearing when Koa tried to approach. Each time she carried a new, peculiar detail. Once, a delicate, thin sash wrapped around her waist, emitting a deep indigo light. Another, time. Bare feet touching the ground with tiny, shimmering specks like stardust. And the last time, just before dawn broke, she stood by an ancient tree, and from her hands, tiny golden motes of light seemed to gently float upwards. Koa felt no fear. Instead, he felt an intense mystery and allure. He no longer thought it was an illusion. He began to believe she was a guide, an echoing figure trying to lead him to something. He grabbed his camera, attempting to photograph her, but each time he raised the camera, the figure had already vanished. As the sun began to rise, painting a corner of the sky red, Koa arrived at his hometown. He had driven all night, but he didn't feel tired. On the contrary, he was full of energy and an unprecedented curiosity. He told his story to his grandmother, the oldest woman in the family, who always believed in mystical things. His grandmother listened to Koa's story with eyes full of understanding. She caressed his hair, smiling gently. "My dear boy," she said, her voice as warm as a flowing stream, "you have met your dream weaver." His grandmother explained that in the culture of the people in this region, there were ancient spirits called dream weavers. They were neither human nor ghosts, but entities created from human dreams and forgotten memories. They appeared on deserted roads, in the quietest moments of the night, to guide lost souls or those seeking a certain truth. The echoing figure you saw, she was trying to show you something, his grandmother continued. The path you were on was not just a physical road, but also the path of your soul. Each time she appeared, it was a reminder, a sign. His grandmother took out an old, faded notebook. It was filled with sketches and stories of people who had met dream weavers. She showed Koa a drawing of a woman with long, glowing hair, exactly like the echoing figure he had seen. Below the drawing, there, was an ancient symbol, an image of a compass without a needle, but instead, swirling rings of light. "Do you remember the tiny lights floating up from her hands?" his grandmother asked. "Those are memory lights. She was showing you what has been forgotten." Koa understood that the echoing figure was not frightening at all, but a guide for the soul, a reminder of the connection between the tangible and the intangible, between the present and the past. She didn't want to scare him, but wanted to show him the beauty of forgotten things, the beauty of memories, and the beauty of the very path he was on. From then on, Koa's long drives were no longer mere journeys. He carried his camera, not just to photograph landscapes, but to record magical moments, the signs the universe sent him. He learned to listen to the wind, the rustling leaves, the hum of the earth and stones. He found peace in the stillness of the night and the beauty of mysteries. Sometimes, on full moon nights, when he was driving on a deserted road, he would still see a faint figure by the roadside. She would still have her back to him, still shimmer with jade green, deep indigo, and golden light. He didn't stop, but he smiled. He knew she was there, accompanying him, and guiding him to new discoveries. Koa no longer felt alone on his long journeys. He knew that another world existed parallel to his own, a world of dreams, memories, and dream weavers protecting and guiding. As night fell, and the silver moonlight streamed into his room, Koa lay in bed, his eyes gently closed. He felt the gentle presence of the echoing figure, felt the hum of distant memories. He drifted off to sleep, a serene smile on his lips, lulled by the melody of the road, by the stories of mysteries, and by the love of a vast universe where encounters are never just coincidences. The humming clock of memories. In a winding little alley in the old quarter, nestled among quaint general stores and old tailor shops, stood a small antique store called Timeless Corner. It was a dusty, mysterious place, with items stacked from floor to ceiling, each carrying its own story. Anne, a young composer with a romantic soul and ears sensitive to the sounds of life, often wandered there, seeking inspiration for her music. She particularly loved old clocks, for each tick-tock seemed to whisper secrets of time. One rainy afternoon, Anne stepped into Timeless Corner, the doorbell jingling softly. The scent of old wood and aged paper mingled, creating a pleasantly quiet atmosphere. Amidst hundreds of items, Anne's gaze was drawn to an ancient grandfather clock tucked away in a corner. It wasn't too large, made of dark walnut wood, with intricate carvings of ivy leaves and soaring swallows. The brass face was tarnished, but the hands still pointed precisely to 12 o'clock. What made it special was that it didn't emit the regular ticking sound of other clocks. Instead, it had a very faint hum, like a forgotten melody. Anne felt an intense pull. She reached out and touched the wooden surface, feeling the coldness of time. The hum seemed to grow clearer, like an invitation. She asked to buy the clock. The shop owner, an old man with eyes that held many stories, simply smiled enigmatically. "Young lady, this clock has been here for a very long time. It carries many memories. Please cherish it," and brought the clock back to her small apartment. She placed it in the center of her living room, where the morning light could illuminate it. The clock's hum seemed to fill the space, soothing Anne's soul in a strange way. However, from the day the clock arrived, Anne's life began to experience strange changes. They weren't frightening or troublesome. Rather, they possessed a mystical beauty, like small magical occurrences. The next morning, when Anne woke up, she found the small cactus pots she had placed on her windowsill, which had withered from neglect, were suddenly unusually vibrant, their tiny flowers blooming in radiant colors she had never seen before. At the same time, the air in the apartment became remarkably fresher and cooler, as if she were living in a secret garden, and thought it was just a coincidence. But then, things continued to happen. Anne's personal items, like her wooden comb or favorite pencil, would suddenly change their positions mysteriously. Sometimes they were neatly placed on her desk. Other times they were tidily tucked away in a drawer where she remembered leaving them elsewhere. There were no signs of disturbance, just a subtle arrangement, as if an invisible hand were tidying up. Most remarkably, Anne's dreams became more vivid than ever. Every night she plunged into colorful dreams where she saw ancient scenes of a small town by a river, old-fashioned people with gentle smiles, and a melodious tune, like the hum of the clock, constantly echoing in her mind. In her dreams, Anne felt herself walking on cobblestone streets, listening to the whispered stories of the wind, and began to record these dreams in a notebook. She realized that these dreams weren't random, but were forgotten memories, pieces from the past that the clock was trying to tell her. She began to believe the clock didn't carry a curse, but was a memory artifact, a bridge to a bygone era. One afternoon, as Anne sat before the clock, its hum grew clearer. This time it wasn't just a melody, but also other fragmented sounds. Children's laughter, footsteps on gravel, the distant chime of a church bell. Anne closed her eyes. She felt as if she were traveling back in time. She decided to research the clock's origins. Anne returned to Timeless Corner, asking the owner about its history. The shop owner, with his usual enigmatic smile, directed Anne to an old, venerable library at the end of the alley, which housed ancient documents about the neighborhood. In the library, Anne found old books and maps. She spent days researching, and finally, she found a note about a talented family of clockmakers who had once lived in the very apartment and now occupied hundreds of years ago. They were master artisans, not only creating time-telling devices, but also believing that every object possessed its own soul, a memory that could be preserved in finely crafted items. The clock, and owned, was the last and most cherished work of that family's last clockmaker. He had tried to imprison his most beautiful memories, the sounds of the peaceful life he loved, within the clock before he passed away. It wasn't a curse, but a spiritual legacy, a symphony of memories passed down through time. Its hum was precisely the 1,000-year song of the town, of the people who had once lived there, and returned home, her heart filled with emotion and inspiration. She understood that the peculiar events weren't misfortune, but the clock's way of trying to communicate, awakening her senses so she could perceive the beauty of the past, of forgotten things. The blooming flowers, the fresh air, or the shifting objects were all manifestations of the positive energy from the clock, from the beautiful memories it held. With this newfound inspiration, Anne began to compose music. She incorporated the clock's hum into her melodies, creating pieces that were deeply ancient, yet remarkably modern. She included the sounds of laughter, footsteps, and church bells that she had heard in her dreams and directly from the clock itself. Anne's music wasn't just music, it was stories told through sound. It transported listeners back to old quarters, to the people who once lived there, to moments of peace and beauty. Everyone felt a strange tranquility, a gentle nostalgia when listening to her music. Anne became a beloved artist, not only for her talent but for her ability to touch the deepest memories within people's hearts. And whenever Anne needed to find peace or inspiration, she would sit before the clock. She didn't need to touch it. She simply needed to listen to its gentle hum. That hum echoed through the space like a soft lullaby, a reminder of the eternity of time, of memories, and of stories that never truly end. In the tranquil depths of the night, as everything fell into deep slumber, from Anne's small apartment, the clock's hum steadily resonated. It was the song of time, the whisper of memories, and the lullaby of souls that had once lived. And lay in bed, her eyes gently closed, feeling the pervasive peace. She knew that the clock wasn't a cursed possession, but a treasure of memory, a silent companion, always whispering beautiful tales of the past into her sleep, guiding her into serene, inspiring dreams. The innocent tapes from the attic. In an ancient house nestled beneath the shade of lush old trees, where afternoon sunlight filtered through old windows, painting golden streaks on the wooden floor, lay an attic rarely visited. It was a dusty, yet strangely inviting space, filled with old, cobweb-covered items, each seeming to hold its own story. Anne, a young architect with a dreamy soul and a special fondness for tales of the past, had just moved into this house. She loved its tranquility and ancient beauty, and often spent her weekend afternoons exploring the attic, treating it like a treasure trove waiting to be unearthed. One drizzly afternoon, as the gentle patter of rain on the roof tiles created a soothing background melody, Anne found an old, dusty tape recorder. It was a classic model with large buttons and a magnetic tape reel inside. The recorder seemed to have been forgotten for a very long time, but was surprisingly intact. Next to it was a small wooden box filled with other old tapes, carefully numbered in a flowing script. Anne was curious. She wiped the dust off the machine, plugged it in, and pressed play. A faint static hum filled the air, then suddenly a very soft hum, like the wind rustling through leaves, filled the quiet space of the attic. It wasn't a normal voice, but a series of melodious sounds, full of emotion, like a natural symphony, and felt a strong pull, a strange sense of peace spreading through her chest. She listened to the tape repeatedly. Each time she discovered smaller details, the distant chirping of birds, the gentle gurgle of water, and sometimes a very faint child's laughter blended into the main melody. It wasn't frightening laughter, but the laughter of innocence, of joy. Anne began to explore the other tapes. Each tape seemed to contain its own symphony, an echo from the past she never thought she'd hear. Some tapes only held the sound of falling rain, yet they carried a profound stillness. Others were filled with the rustle of leaves in the wind, the whispered secrets of plants. However, among those tapes, a few were particularly special. When Anne played them, besides the familiar sounds of nature, she also heard very faint whispering, voices. They were indistinct, as if recorded from a great distance or from another dimension. These voices weren't frightening, but rather hesitant, earnest, like advice, like gentle reminders, and spent hours listening, trying to decipher the whispers. She realized they were conversations from decades ago, but not ordinary conversations. They were the whispers of people who had once lived in this house, people who seemed to have the ability to perceive the subtle vibrations of the world around them. An old woman's voice resonated soft as the wind. The old tree in the yard. It's whispering about changes. The lake is drying up and the purple flowers will bloom out of season. Hearing this, Anne recalled her garden. For the past few days, she had noticed the pond in her backyard was unusually low, and a wild purple flower she had never seen before suddenly bloomed brightly, even though it wasn't its season. This filled her with a sense of astonishment and profound understanding. Another deep male voice softly said, "Don't rush. Everything has its own rhythm. Listen to the voice of the earth, the stones. They are telling of a new path, a path leading to peace." The chilling warnings about the future Anne had initially imagined turned out to be vague yet wise prophecies, gentle advice for people to live in harmony with nature, to listen to the signs the earth sends. They weren't omens of disaster, but gentle guidance, reminders of the constant change of all things and the importance of connection, and realized that this tape recorder wasn't an ordinary device. It was a memory recorder, created by those who had once lived here, people with a special ability to perceive and record energetic vibrations, the sounds of the soul from nature and the flow of time. She began to experiment and took the recorder to the garden turned on record mode. She sat quietly under the old tree, closed her eyes, trying to listen. When she played the tape back, she not only heard birds chirping and leaves rustling, but also a very faint hum, like the song of the tree itself, a melody full of life and endurance, and spent more time slowing down her life. She strolled in the garden, touched the leaves, listened to the insects. She felt a deep connection with the house, with the garden, and with the spirits who had once lived there. The peculiar events she once thought mysterious now became clearer. They were the way the garden, the house, and nature itself were communicating with her. As an architect, and found new inspiration, she began to design living spaces that were not only beautiful, but also capable of connecting people with nature, with the earth's vibrations. She believed that a house was not just a shelter, but a living entity, carrying memories and stories within it, and also began to share her story with close friends. They listened with curiosity and surprise. Some thought she was imagining things, but others felt the truth in her story. They began to come to Anne's attic, listening to the tapes together, feeling the echoes from the past. Evenings in the attic were no longer about seeking terrifying mysteries, but about meditation, about listening to the song of time, and felt herself part of a continuous flow, a bridge between past and present. She no longer worried about the future. She believed that if she knew how to listen, the universe would always send gentle guidance. In the tranquil depths of the night, as moonlight streamed through the attic window, Anne lay in her old bed, surrounded by antiques and tapes. She felt a profound peace, an eternal connection with the echoes from the past. The hum from the recorder steadily resonated, like a soothing lullaby, a reminder of the beauty of stillness and the wisdom of time. And closed her eyes, a serene smile on her face. She drifted off to sleep, lulled by the voices of ancient spirits, by the melodies of nature, and by the love of a house that had witnessed countless generations, where stories never truly disappear, but merely wait for someone to listen to be told again.